again, everybody, and welcome back to the latest episode of the UK Glamping podcast, hosted by us here at Glam Protect. Something a little bit different for you this week, a little bit of a break from the norm for chatting to you about who we are and what we do. And in that vein, I'd like to welcome my special guest, Derry Green. Thanks for coming along, Derry.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, for those of you who maybe recognise the name or indeed recognise the face, if you're watching on YouTube, you may well have seen Derry before. He's become somewhat of a glamping-based celebrity over the last few months. Can you tell our listeners / viewers a little bit about yourself and your backstory?
Yeah, so this all started as a project for me and the kids in that first lockdown. So literally 4 years ago today was when we finished building the first glamping pod that I had here. No intention of opening a glamping site. It was just something to do because we was bored in lockdown. And Lad Bible did a story on me on what a dad had built in lockdown for his kids when everybody was building home bars and gyms.
Yeah.
And there's a photo of me and my son and my daughter sat in front of this, well, what I now know to be a glamping pod. At the time, it was just my garden, and it was what a dad had built for his kids in lockdown. That post went viral. People started messaging me saying, can they book it for a holiday, which seemed insane to me at the time. Why would you want to come and stay in my back garden? But I thought, you know what, why not? And I listed it on Airbnb, and within 3 days, it was fully booked for 2 years in advance.
Wow.
So I've seen a gap in the market for what I was doing there, and it took me a full year to get the planning permission to build an actual glamping site. And that's where the Secret Garden Glamping was born.
Wow, so yeah, quite an unusual origin story, if you like, and probably a more productive use of the timber than most people were using for their back garden bars and different setups during lockdown. So the Secret Garden Glamping kind of burst into life out of circumstance, and I suppose in a lot of ways that's very similar to our CEO's story in that we very much started around a similar sort of time.
Yeah.
So to have that kind of occupancy rate that quickly is very, very unusual. So you must have done something differently that kind of sets you apart from the crowd. Now, some of our listeners or viewers may have heard a little bit about your story because I believe you were on a recent episode of Dragon's Den, weren't you?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the background of the company since then and how things have changed for you since that first kind of booking started to roll in?
Yeah, so when I first opened that unit, again, I never expected anything from it. I was overwhelmed with the response that came through and quickly realised I had no idea how to run a glamping site, how to run a glamping business, what I needed to do. So it was a huge learning curve for me. And when I look back now, when we had that one unit, it was, in theory, relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
We're now at 13 units. We are still the most viewed, most followed, most booked site in the UK. We currently book, on average, around 487 days ahead. So we're currently fully booked for about 18 to 24 months in advance. Some of the units are fully booked all the way through till 2027 now. And it's been, a massive change over the past 4 years of how I do stuff. It's constantly evolving. I am still new to the industry in the grand scheme of things. So figuring out what we do well, figuring out what our guests are looking for. Since COVID, a lot has changed in the kind of glamping landscape, and what people are looking for has changed. Why people are holidaying have changed. So if you look what I was doing in that first pod 4 years ago to what we're doing today, it's almost night and day. It's almost two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an ever evolving process. The market does shift quite quick and what people want to do. So it's trying to keep up with that and figure out why customers are coming to us and not acting like, I guess, like a traditional business. This is more about figuring out why and how people come to find us and what we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, congratulations, because that is an unprecedented level of demand for any glamping site. My first thought, you said you've gone from 1 unit to 13 units, is how big's your back garden? I mean, are these all in one place, or I take it you've had to find a bit more space now, have you?
I was very lucky. So when I did that first unit was literally, 50 yards from the kitchen door. But when it came to it, I bought this property and it had a 4-acre piece of woodland with the property. So when it came to the planning permission, I was in a really unique position where I already had the land to move into, which is usually quite a big barrier to entry for most people coming into the market.
Absolutely.
So I had the land there. The planning permission was obviously, interesting is probably the best way of putting it.
It's never straightforward, is it? Yeah, it's always
Yeah, there's all those hoops and trying to get the planners to understand what I was trying to create, because they had, like a lot of people, just had this vision of, we had a beautiful 4-acre woodland and they thought I was going to chop everything down, level it, build a big flat space and put some pods in a row. And it was getting them round to my way of thinking was hard at first. When we did the second set of planning permission to extend the site, that was easy. They understood the vision then. I had the same planning officer. They came out and literally said, "Where do you want it?" And I said, "There." And they went, "Yeah." And that was, and we still had to do the hoops and the surveys and everything else, but it was a lot easier once that officer had understood what the concept was.
It's interesting you say that. That's a conversation we have over and over again with our clients when they're trying to consider the scale of their initial development. Because a lot of landowners are blessed with a little bit more space and think maybe, okay, we're going to do 10 or 12. And quite often it does make far more sense to take that phased approach and get that not only proof of concept for yourself as much as anything else, but also for the planning officers, where you can say, look, we're actually not doing any harm here. We're adding to the environment. With woodland especially.
It's working with guys like yourselves, because again, if I'd gone into this and tried to do it all myself, it would have never happened. It wouldn't have done. I would have done it wrong. I would have tried to push everything through. I was really lucky to have a consultant on board to help me with that process. And that's what, I'm seeing it now from the other side, when people are coming to us with either with planning permission that they've received or wanting to gain planning permission with ideas. And it's making sure that's put to the planners in the correct way. If it's not done, and it's very easy to do it wrong, it can cause a bucket load of problems.
Isn't it just? Yeah, I think at times it can be a little bit of an exercise in ego massaging when it comes to planning officers. Obviously you've got to fit the policies first and foremost, but it is more than that. It's making sure that they do kind of understand your wider vision for it and don't just think, oh, here's someone trying to make a quick buck at the expense of their local community. You look at things like Clarkson's farm, for example, where there's quite vitriolic opposition to everything he tries to do, and you think you've probably not helped yourself there an awful lot with the attitude and the way you've gone about it. And I think that can be applied to an awful lot of planning applications and the way that you approach not only the planning officers themselves, but also neighbours and your wider community as a whole. So obviously you're in a fantastic position now where you've managed to expand and the demand is still there, which is absolutely incredible. What do you think you put that down to? Because you look at other glamping sites and the national average occupancy is somewhere around 65 to 70% of the year. So what do you think is the main point of difference for you? What's making you stand out from the crowd?
Well, there's lots of different things. I mean, so just for a bit of context, we actually run in cash terms at 103% occupancy because of our cancellation policy and things like that. So in cash terms, we actually run at 103% occupancy and have done for the past 4 years. We turn away around 1,000 bookings a week currently for people who want to book. And that's not to mention, our waiting list is a little over 116,000 at the moment. And we have an audience of about 1.2, 1.3 million followers across social media. So and it's
so there's
easier
to get into Gordon Ramsay's restaurant.
Ultimately, yeah. So ultimately, the one main thing is our social media. It's driving those bookings for people to be able to find us. So there's two sides to it. I'd say we've got a social media business and we've got a glamping site. So our social media business is driving traffic to our product, which in our case is a glamping site. It could be we make trainers, or it could be we sell boat trips, but in our case, it's glamping. So that's the first kind of key point, is getting a reach and getting the audience to be able to see your product. Now, obviously, that only works if you've got a good product as well. Although, I always say the same thing. Our site physically isn't any different to another site. It's still pods and yurts and geodomes and tree houses. It's that side of things isn't. It's more what we do whilst the guests are on site. So as I've said multiple times on different things now, I see us as a experience provider that also has accommodation. We're not an accommodation provider. So we don't act like an accommodation provider. We're just trying to get people in beds like Premier Inn and Travelodge do,
Mm-hmm.
that's one way to go. But we're not. We're looking to provide somebody with an experience, and then, you can also stay if you want. And that's the way we look at it. So it's all focused around why people are coming away. So we want them to spend as much time outdoors as we can. The unit or the pod or the treehouse or whatever, in theory, to me, is the last thing on the list. So the new unit we've just done that opened about a month or so ago, that took about 13 weeks to build. The first 10 weeks were all the outdoor space, the seating areas, the hot tubs, the barbecues, all that sort of stuff. And the last 3 weeks were physically building a unit there. So there was just an empty space to put something, because our focus is all around what people do there. Again, because I'm new to the industry, when I sat there and thought, glamping is glamorous camping. So as a kid, we used to go camping every weekend with my parents. And I thought back to what I did. What did I do when we went camping? And I remember, my mum and dad had set up the tent for the first hour in the pouring down rain, with me and my brother running around in circles. And as soon as it was up, we'd walk away from it and we'd go and climb a tree or swim in a river or whatever it was. What we didn't do was sit in that tent for 2 days. So when it came to glamping, the thing that baffled me was everybody focused on the unit, which in theory is the tent, and expect people to sit in it for 2 days, which never happened when we went camping. So why would it be any different this way? So my focus was always on what else do you do? And you just come back to the tent at night. So it's providing those services, and that can be on-site facilities. You can have things like swimming pools and playgrounds and restaurants and whatever else, but you don't have to have that. You can literally have, a fire pit and a board game of Cluedo with half the pieces missing. It doesn't really matter as long as they're doing something whilst they're there.
No, a really, really good point, and a question that we get from our clients all the time as to what they should do around and about their units, whatever units they might choose. And as you said earlier, I think you see a lot of sites that you go and you turn up and there's kind of 6 pods in a line, which is fine. If that's all you want is a nice view and to sit in a hot tub and take a few pictures for Instagram, there's absolutely a market for that. But when we talk about kind of the future of the industry and how people can protect themselves against potential saturation in the market going forward, these are exactly the topics that are absolutely front and center of those conversations. Is what are the guests doing when they're not asleep? Because we're the best one in the world. No one goes on holiday to watch Netflix.
You can do that in your bedroom. I always say the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And it is hard. So when you're looking at things like weekends, school holidays, they're obviously going to fill up. It is. Unless you're doing something really bad, they're going to fill up.
Yeah.
So my focus has always been on who is coming on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. Who's coming staying on that day? Because that's not kids. It's not families. It's not couples getting away from work. Who's doing it and what are they doing it for? Because the chances are it's going to be raining. What can they do whilst they're there? And that's been the thing. And that's what keeps our occupancy levels so high, is because we're focusing on that. Again, weekends, summer holidays, school holidays, all that sort of stuff will fill up. How do we get the person there in December? And that's what I've always looked at.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the old kind of iceberg analogy, isn't it? It's very easy to focus on the 20% you can see, but
yeah,
it's all about those quieter months. That's what's going to set you apart from the crowd. And on the subject of being set apart from the crowd, you must be doing something right, because I know quite a while back we recognised you with one of our Glam Protect Awards. And indeed, the Glam Protect Awards are coming back very soon, so you never know. You may end up being a repeat winner if you keep doing things right. But
it's with my trophy stuff over here.
As I have to get a cabinet built. But it's fair to say, you've been recognised by quite a few people over the past couple of years, and I believe you won one from the AA. But most recently, you've had a very prestigious award, haven't you, from Visit England?
Yeah, it's literally just there over my shoulder, that big gold one there. So yeah, that was last Friday at the Titanic Hotel. We won in our region. So in Visit Lancashire, we won Best Camping, Glamping and Holiday Park of the Year. That then pushed us forward to the national finals, which is Visit England. We were in the final 3 for that, and then ultimately we ended up winning the gold award at those awards at the Titanic in Liverpool, which was amazing. That is a phenomenal achievement for us. I mean, we've won lots of different things, especially locally, but on a national scale, with this year we won the AA's Glamping and Camping Site of the Year, and then we've also won Visit England's Camping, Glamping and Holiday Park of the Year, which are two of the biggest things around, and to win them were phenomenal.
Yeah, an absolutely fantastic performance from, let's be honest, was essentially still a very young company and a very young site, and
Yeah.
you'll be up against people that have been doing it for a lot longer. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a few of the kind of older heads in the market that are a little bit bent out of shape, but ultimately you reap what you sow, and I think you've only got to look at the way you're operating, the way you're going about it, to understand why.
Yeah, well, it is. This industry. I mean, yesterday was a really good example. We had I organised a conference yesterday down in Bristol, to look at starting a glamping association, a glamping trade members association, and there's such a wide, diverse range of businesses. It can be anything from a bell tent all the way up to a 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 tree house that's better than my bedroom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all of this comes under one, and we're all doing these different little things and little quirks, and it's a real industry that's a melting pot for different stuff, and that brings out new ideas all the time. It's not something that, again, even with myself, we've finished building this current site here. We're now opening multiple locations, but this site isn't done. It's never finished. So yes, we've built everything. We don't just sit here for the next 20 years now. As I said today, we are 4 years old. That first unit opened 4 years ago, and it closes at the end of this year. So at the end of this year, it's closed off on the calendar, and we're then going to redo that unit. Although it doesn't need it from a kind of point of view, from the facilities point of view, what it needs is, there's a change in the market. Like I said, what we did 4 years ago and what we're doing today are like night and day. So we're adding new features. There's new technology coming down the line. Why people are holidaying changes. So we'll give that whole refit, and it becomes a new property again. And we're constantly evolving that offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having the option to be flexible like that is going to be so crucial as this market continues to grow, because ultimately it is still a very young market. And I think certainly myself, and I think many others, didn't even really consider the kind of staycation market until the easing of that first lockdown, and then it became such an obvious option. And not only that, with the rise of the cost of holidaying abroad, it's just booming, and is forecast to continue doing so. So fingers crossed that this is just the first of many times that we'll be talking over the coming weeks, months, and years about the success and growth of both of our companies.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
before I let you go, what we always like to end on is a pearl of wisdom, if we can tease one out of you. So, do you have any one particular piece of advice that you would offer to anybody who's considering setting up, as something to leave with them?
Yeah. So if you are absolutely new to this process and starting off, getting advice from people like yourselves. I mean, even people like me, I'm happy to take phone calls all the time. I do from lots of new people, because there's what I've found with this journey is, I tried to do as much as I could on my own, and quickly realised that I've probably wasted, I would say, somewhere in the region of £100,000 on stuff that I either didn't need, didn't work, or wasn't the right thing for me. So I'm very clear that if I hadn't have got the right consultancy for me in the first place, this project would have never happened if I'd
Yeah,
gone at it on my own. So I'm very grateful for that. And there's lots of people within the industry doing lots of amazing things, and that can be anything from planning to marketing to social media, all these different things, because you can't be a jack of all trades. I know what I'm
absolutely.
good at. I really, really enjoy social media and marketing, and that's my kind of gift within this. This is what I've focused on from day one. But I know I'm not good at changeovers, for example.
Yeah,
The girls ever let me near a bed sheet, it looks like my 3-year-old's made it. Do you know what I mean?
fair
So I
enough.
know what I'm not good at. And what tends to happen within glamping is, people try and be a jack of all trades. They try and do everything, and they end up getting stuck within the business instead of working on the business. And that can be at times, whether it's reaching out to friends and family who can help in different areas, or other established businesses within the community. And that can be from, like I say, even manufacturing, planning, consultancy, marketing, social media, all these things. That's what's going to help people within the industry going forward, and what can really boost a business.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's funny how much that echoes exactly what Callum said, our CEO, when I asked him, is essentially fail as cheaply and as quickly as you can, so that you can kind of learn those lessons and identify the areas where you can get help from others. Derry, listen, thank you very much for joining us today. To our listeners and viewers, I'll put all of Derry's information in the description of this episode. I know there's a long waiting list, but there's a long waiting list for a reason. So get along to that website, get yourself signed up, and come and see what all the fuss is about. Derry, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care.